Hi Hudson, Steve Dube from Hudson Fire here. A little chilly these days. Brr. I just wanted to go over some heating safety with you today. Thought it would be very important to talk about heating safety. Let's talk about those space heaters. You have a space heater at home? I hope that space heater is actually manufactured and used for whatever you're going to use it for. Make sure when you're going to use a space heater that's plugs in and uses the electrical, you want to make sure that electrical, when you use it, let's try not to use any extension cords on it. No extension cords on your space heaters. This is a nice short one. This is a nice thick one, which is excellent, and it's a 3-prong. You want to plug that directly into the outlet and into the unit. You also want to make sure you read that manufacturer's guide to make sure you're allowed to use an extension cord on there, because you may not be allowed to use an extension cord, which is, please follow that manufactured specifications. Let's talk about space heaters and giving them space. We're giving them space because we want to give them at least 3 feet of space, 36 inches. We're looking for 36 inches of space between that space heater and anything that's combustible. Let's say this tablecloth. Let's say a table. Let's say a chair that you're next to. We want to make sure you keep things at least 36 inches away. That's including people too. You want to make sure, just because it feels nice and warm and radiant heat feels really nice, you don't want to get it too close to yourself because you don't want your clothes to catch on fire. Then you're going to remember those 3 special words: stop, drop, cover your face, and roll back and forth. Also, if you need some other type of heat source, let's try not to use a stove. I've had a couple people call and say, gee, trying to heat my kitchen area and maybe a little bit of the living room, I'm just gonna open up that oven and use the oven. That's okay, right? That's not what your oven's used for. Your oven's used for just a couple of 3 hours to cook something or heat something up. So you wanna make sure you don't use your stove at all. That stove is just used to heat things up at home and to cook things. So make sure that gets done properly. Hey, while we were talking about space heaters, let's talk a little bit about the fuels you're gonna use. You want to make sure you use that right fuel for whatever type of heating unit you have, whether it's an outlet to plug it into, or whether it's using gasoline or kerosene. Remember, those kerosene containers are usually yellow. They're a different color. So you want to make sure you're using the correct type of fuel for the correct type of heating unit that you're going to have. Let's talk a little bit about unvented heaters while we're talking about kerosene heaters. We probably have some people out there that still have some kerosene heaters left over from the 70s or 80s. As long as they're still UL listed, have some type of listing on it, either UL, Underwriters Laboratory, or FM, Factory Mutual. You want to make sure that that's used in the right spot. Remember, it's only used in a single-family residence, not in a duplex, not in a triplex, not in a multifamily unit. And one of the major problems with people using those type of kerosene heaters that are unvented, the ones that you see, they look like a little mushroom, put in the middle of the room and warm up the room, they sure do put that terrible smell in the room, that kerosene smell. And the one thing we want to talk about is it needs to have makeup air. Well, if you were going to use a kerosene heater, it's going to tell you need to open up a window somewhere in that room to give it makeup air. Because what's happening is carbon monoxide is being pumped into that room. It's not going anywhere. It has no vent. It's using this window as the vent, and you're really trying to distribute the air that's inside that room. A lot of people say, why am I going to open this window if I want to try to heat the room? Because that's what unvented heaters have to have. They have to have makeup air. So, shut your window. Don't use the unvented heater. You could use that space heater. Just make sure, like I said, we keep that 3 feet of distance away. While we're going back to those space heaters that you can plug in, use electricity, let's talk about multi-outlets. If we're going to use multi-outlets, first of all, you probably should not be using a multi-outlet on any type of space heater. Even though it's very short, it's got a nice thick cord on it, and it has the grounding receptacle on it. You still don't want to use a receptacle like this or a multi-outlet like this, because if you read the manufacturer's specifications for that electric heater, it's going to tell you not to plug it into one of these. And while we're talking about multi-units, multi-adapters or multi-outlets, let's try not to plug one into another, to another, to another, and then plug it into the wall. That's called daisy chaining. What happens is The automatic devices, the safety devices that work inside of these don't work if you start daisy chaining them. So remember, one outlet, you can now use those outlets there, but let's not hook another outlet into this one. While we're still talking about heating appliances, let's make sure that if you have someone who's going to install a heating appliance for you, if it's natural gas or liquid propane, make sure that they have a gas fitter's license. New Hampshire has a gas fitter's license that actually looks like a regular driver's license, has this picture on it, and it has his gas fitter's license number on it. He has to be a certified gas fitter to be able to do connections for natural gas or liquid propane gas. You want to make sure that he knows what he's doing. Pick the right person. You also want to make sure when they're reinstalling some heating units that it is the right amount of BTUs, British thermal units. It's correct size for whatever the supply you have that's there, and make sure that it's connected to a vent properly. It may be a dual vent, which may have a vent that goes out to the outside and then it brings in its own makeup air for that unit, which I can put it into a nice small room, or make sure that that room that it's in, it has enough makeup air in that room for it to work. If you've noticed that your vent outside for some type of heating unit that you have, if you've noticed there's some black soot around it, it's probably because it's not getting very good makeup air. It's probably not running properly. If you have carbon monoxide detectors, they should be going off. Maybe if they're not going off because they're too old, because those carbon monoxide detectors are just like smoke detectors. 10 years, that's their lifespan, 10 years. So look at the manufacturer's date on those smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. If they're coming up to 7, 8, 9, 10 years, it's time to change those out. Here's a fun fact for you. It's a fire prevention fact that half of the heating fires are reported during the months of December, January, and February. Well, we're right in the middle of it now. So we want to make sure that most of those fires that we have, we can start cutting those down if you do some homework and make sure that space heater or stationary heater is installed properly. We're going to again go back to a little bit about portable heaters and some portable heater safety. Nearly half of all the space heater fires we have in the country, they're usually some type of an electric heater that causes that fire, and we have a death out of that. So nearly half of those deaths in the country, usually there's about 3,000 or so civilian fire deaths that happen in the country, and nearly half of those are some type of space heater. And again, they happen December, January, and February. So let's be real safe this month. We're going to have a storm tomorrow on Saturday. You want to make sure that you're all set for tomorrow. Make sure that your heater unit works fine. If you're going to be using wood for a wood stove or pellets for your pellet stove, that you have enough. Make sure that the pellet stove is running properly. Make sure it's been installed properly. If you need to have a fire permit for that specific wood stove or solid fuel burning equipment, either the wood stove or pellet stove, you can call Inspectional Services, area code 603-886-6005, and we can help you with that. Just a couple more things about space heaters. If you've bought a space heater and you need that space heater, maybe over this weekend because it's going to get some snow and it's going to be a little cold, and you want some supplemental heat, you want to make sure, again, keep that 3 feet of distance away from it. You want to make sure that any new type of heater or maybe an old one that you found has a tip over safety on it, which means when you turn it on, you tip that unit over and it stops, it shuts off. If it doesn't, cut the cord on it and throw it away and try to buy a new one. That's better to have. It's a safer one to have. And again, we want to make sure we want to keep people 3 feet away, 36 inches, and draw that circle around it and make sure that's not a play area either for kids. And while we're talking about space heaters, you know, one of these type of space heaters, great for ice fishing, great for outside in the bob house. Just remember that 3 feet of distance. Got to have that 3 feet of distance all the way around that radiant heat spot. You shouldn't be using one of these at home. Don't use it at home because, again, this is another one of those units that's going to need that makeup air, so I'd have to open the window if I use one of those in the house. And you're really not supposed to use it in the house at all. Of course, we don't want to break your door down. We don't want to go into your single-family home and tell you you can't. But these are very dangerous, and they can't be in any other type of place other than maybe a house that's under construction, maybe a barn. Just keep combustibles away from it. And just be careful. Make sure you read all the safety information that's on the card that comes with it. You want to make sure that it's mounted properly. You want to make sure that people stay away from it. Again, that 3 feet of distance. And you want to make sure that you have a full propane tank. And when it runs out, time to switch it to a new one. So just be careful with these types of radiant heaters. Just trying to help you out. I'm glad that I had the time to be able to talk to you about some heating appliances today. If you have any other questions, you can call Inspectional Services, 603-886-6005. And thanks. We'll see you again. Be safe.